back in 1992, the Pittsburgh Penguins won their second straight Stanley Cup. And it was the most impressive run I ever saw Pittsburgh go on, and I'm including this year's. And I'm going to talk about why. And it's actually in here. For the number 9 team of all-time greatest teams. I can't qualify that. I just know this was one of the best teams I saw. On its May 8th, 1992 front cover, the Hockey News featured an image of a pensive-looking Mario Lemieux accompanied by a bold cell line. NHL dynasties, now dinosaurs, dominant teams have become extinct. The statement was meant to reflect hockey's pending pendulum shift, one that would come to fruition with the Penguins' impending demise. They were behind the Washington Capitals 3-1 in the series at the time they took the picture. The Penguins, spoiler alert, came back and won. As history revealed, at least in 1992, it was impossible to kill a walking bird. A season in which frequent turmoil was the underlying theme for the Pens was punctuated by an NHL record-tying 11-game playoff winning streak en route to back-to-back crowns. The champs proved the disbelievers wrong, overcoming the contract squabbles, critical injuries, and most significantly, the tragic death of their coach to reach the pinnacle. Secrets to their success: dazzling depth, top-end talent, and fierce desire. We had spectacular players, said Pierre Maguire, who was an assistant coach in '92. It's scary in terms of what it would cost to keep that team together today. The depth chart is an honor roll, chock full of potential All-Stars, Hall of Famers, soon-to-be Hall of Famers, and at least one should-be Hall of Famer. Hall of Famers, they had Ron Francis, Mario Lemieux, Joe Mullen, Larry Murphy, and Brian Tocchet. Tom Barrasso is the one that they argue should be in there. Jaromir Jagr's going to get in there someday. Kevin Stevens, if he'd played as well throughout his career as he did then, he absolutely would have been, but he didn't. And, yeah, that's it for Hall of Famers. The blue line core wasn't as star-studded as the forwards, but featured the likes of Paul Coffey until the February trade. Coffey's attitude had kind of become the story by then, more than Coffey's talent. Larry Murphy, Ulf, and Shell Samuelson. And the last line of defense was money netminder Tom Barrasso. Of the group, 6 are already Hall of Fame members, which I mentioned. Jagr will make it 7 3 years after he retires. Recchi could make it 8. And he could. Mark Recchi could definitely be the 8th. Then there's Barrasso, who on merit should be a definite number 8 or 9, but remains on the outside looking in, largely due to his prickly relationship with the media. And that's true. That's absolutely true. Gritty role players such as Bob Airy, Phil Bourque, and Gordy Roberts completed a stellar mix that was ultimately coached by legend Scotty Bowman. Mario was the captain, but the team probably had 9 captains, said Penguins Vice President Tom McMillan, who covered the team for the Post-Gazette in '92. And yet Brian Tocchet, who completely accepted a secondary role. Completely. And I've mentioned before that Brian Tocchet, for me, he is the greatest example of a guy I've ever seen who's been like a primary go-to 50-goal scorer. And then with the '92 Penguins, he was bottom 6. Just imagine Crosby 5 years from now playing a 4th-line center, 3rd-line center role, scoring 30 points, and still being happy and a big part of a winning team. It's really, really unusual. After coming off the first cup and with Coach Bob Johnson's illness, it seemed like the whole season we plodded along, Larry Murphy said. We really never got our footing, and you can see it. They got 5 wins in October, 8 in November, 9 in December. They only had 3 in January and 3 in February. March, April, they had 11. The tone for turmoil was set in training camp when it was learned Johnson had been diagnosed with brain cancer. Badger was a universally loved hockey man, and news of his illness weighed heavily on the group. He eventually succumbed to his disease November 26, 1991. It did affect them. It did, and that was something that, you know, you guys have seen throughout the playoffs that just ended a week ago, how I was very, Pittsburgh, I want Nashville to win, and it just didn't happen. I was much more anti-Pittsburgh in '91. But honestly, in '92 when they won it, I was very, very happy because, the Badger Bob thing was just so sad. Because it really kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, here he goes from being, I'm celebrating the Stanley Cup in June, to passing away in November. It happened that fast. Everybody loved Bob, Murphy said. It wasn't the best environment to go out there and play well. We tried to do best under the circumstances. Craig Patrick had to deal with some thorny contract issues, most notably Ron Francis, who missed nearly the entire first month of the campaign while sorting out terms of his new contract. And Francis was as important to them as Malkin is to the Penguins right now. And Francis played at both ends of the ice. I'm not disputing Malkin's talent. Please don't. Francis was one of the all-time greatest as far as two-way forwards. Fortunately for Patrick, he didn't have to turn far for a new coach. Bowman had been hired as director of player personnel in 1990 and agreed to step into the breach. Still, the transition from the affable Johnson to the my way or the highway Bowman proved challenging for some of the players at first. Scotty didn't really change anything, Murphy said. His approach was the same in terms of how he was going to play the game. Now, personality-wise, it was different. Bob Johnson was Mr. Bright. Great day for hockey. Scotty's approach wasn't as enthusiastic, but Scotty was a great coach. We were fortunate someone like him could step in that circumstance. It wasn't easy. It got downright dreary. The Penguins got off to a 5-6-3 start. By late February, they were still just .500. In a battle for the final Patrick Division playoff berth, Lemieux's notorious bad back had flared up frequently, limiting him to 64 games. At times, it was so painful for Lemieux he couldn't bend over to tie his skates. So there you go. I said that not too long ago. Instead, the Penguins hired a youngster for the task. Remarkably, he still managed to win the Art Ross with 131 points. That's crazy. He only played 64 games, scored 131 points with a back so bad he couldn't bend over, and he still won the Art Ross. Bowman, meanwhile, had some points to make of his own. In an attempt to rattle cages at a Penguins practice just prior to Christmas, he delivered reassurance about his faith in the team in the form of a veiled threat. He said, in the only way Scotty could, fellas, we're going to win the cup again, but some of you are playing as though you don't belong here, McGuire recalled. Don't be the guy who, when we're winning the cup in June, is sitting on his couch watching us carried around. Don't be the guy who forces us to trade you out of town to help us get better. He got everybody's attention. That's fantastic. As Bowman was working his brilliance, Patrick was working the phones, masterminding a bold swap that catalyzed a character shift in the team's dressing room. On February 19, 1992, Patrick sent Mark Recchi, Brian Benning, and a first-round pick to Philadelphia for Rick Tocchet, Shel Samuelson, backup goalie Ken Reagan, and a third-round pick. It was masterful. And this was a year after they brought in Francis and Murphy to get that first Stanley Cup. And I felt bad for Recchi getting traded out, but man, Tocchet was insane when he got to Pittsburgh. Just crazy. And the fact it was a Philly-Pittsburgh trade, still mind-blowing to me. Of the three newcomers, Tocchet had the biggest impact. He scored, he hit, he fought. He was so rejuvenated in Pittsburgh. He did whatever was necessary to win and inspired teammates to soar higher and strut with a little more swagger. The Scarborough, Ontario native was at the heart of a pivotal moment when on March 15th in Chicago he took a puck to the face and suffered a broken jaw. Stunningly, he returned to the game with a spaceman-style helmet, scored 2 goals, and opened a bunch of eyes. I think he was the first player to do that. To have the huge face cage to cover up a broken jaw. Other players have done it since. I think Tocchet was first. I remember this was about 10 years after guys started wearing helmets as a rule. And a guy like Tocchet back in the day wouldn't have worn a helmet. Added Francis, I wasn't expecting anything less from him. That's the way he always played. He was a fighter. And I don't mean in the sense of dropping his gloves. He just never gave up. I'd never been a big Tocchet fan in Philly, but now I was stuck with a conundrum. Both becoming a fan of what the Penguins were doing and a fan of Tocchet at the same time. It just felt so weird. Following a 10-day player strike at the beginning of April, which was terrifying because it threatened the entire playoffs, the Penguins secured third place in the division and drew the Capitals in round 1. It was the start of a playoff trek that was a microcosm of their season. They fell behind 3-1, went to Washington for Game 5. Let me know, Capitals fans, if you've seen this one before. We got them down and we're going home. Woohoo! Looking like they were bound for extinction, Bowman decided to alter his strategy, getting rid of the aggressive 2-1-2 check for a passive 1-4 setup. That's the trap. He floated the concept by Lemieux and asked his captain to sell it to some of the team leaders. The move paid off as the Penguins became more responsible defensively and staged a dramatic comeback to win the series in 7. Let me know, Capitals fans, if that's I hate to do this. I like the Capitals, but yeah. Francis said Bowman also weaved wizardry in-game, managing the bench like a champion chess player. That was one of the most masterful coaching jobs I've ever seen in terms of getting the matchups he wanted, Francis said. Bowman, bar none. And people always talk about, Bowman just got all these stats with all these great teams. Yeah, they brought Bowman in because he could make great teams cup winners. He couldn't do it in Buffalo because they weren't a cup-winning team. But they were still better with him as coach than they were when they got rid of him. Round 2 against the Rangers featured another remarkable come-from-behind clash. Down 2-1 and having lost Mario Lemieux to broken wrist. Courtesy of an Adam Graves slash. Oh, I remember that slash. And Mullen to a knee injury in the same game. The Penguins needed to swing momentum. So this is the equivalent to losing Crosby and Hornqvist in the same game. This is the equivalent. I'm just throwing out there like a winger. I guess Hornqvist. The Rangers, who'd finished first overall, looked poised to take a 3-1 stranglehold back to Madison Square Garden, holding a 4-2 lead late in Game 4. But after the Penguins killed a 5-minute major, midway through the first period, Francis fired an innocent-looking 60-foot slap shot at Mike Richter. Found the back of the net and turned the tide in the series and the playoffs. Troy Loney tied the game a minute later, and Francis won it in overtime. I think if I take that shot 999 times, it maybe goes in once, Francis said. This is the puck luck of the Penguins, man. Game 4 against the Blue Shirts was the first of 11 consecutive triumphs. They won 11 in a row in the playoffs. It's just not fair. As Pittsburgh steamrolled Boston, I remember, and Chicago, I remember. I was cheering for Boston. I kind of wanted to see Chicago win one. Lemieux, who returned for round 3 and finished with the league best 16 goals and 34 points in 15 playoff games. He was Conn Smythe winner. Super Mario said at the time he believed it was just as easily could have gone to his teammate, the MVP. Tom Barrasso was superb. He was the key to us winning the Cup. Again, we look back now and we go, yeah, Conn Smythe Trophy, Lemieux. It's easy to forget Lemieux was out for a while in the playoffs and Tom Barrasso really saved them, their goaltender. So don't worry about Matt Murray and Marc-Andre Fleury. It's a Pittsburgh staple that the star forward gets that Conn Smythe, even though you could easily have argued it should have gone to somebody else. That team could seriously beat you anyway, McMillan said. They could play a tough game, they could fight, they could play a defensive game, and they could blow your doors off. And they could win back-to-back cups despite THN's premature notice of extinction. That's a jinx. That's a jinx. Capitals are up 3-1, and you go, yeah, series is done. Awesome. This is great. Now, so there's the 1992 run for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that's why I still view that Penguins team as being the best one, because when they lost their best players, they just kept winning. All Pittsburgh knew how to do at that point was win. Yep, they went through a rough patch, and I'm sure when Crosby and Malkin leave, Pittsburgh will go through another rough patch. But that's a long ways off, and between now and then, they could easily win another cup, 2 cups, 3 cups. I don't know. It really depends on Crosby's health and Malkin's ability to keep playing at the top of his game. You guys can let me know what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And I tell you, these magazines are just fantastic. There's a lot of old magazines, and thankfully Yvonne got me a subscription to the Hockey News Today. I don't actually have an active subscription. I haven't had one in a long time. So she got me one today, and I'll be getting them delivered to the door. It's going to be fun, including all the special issues, so I'm very excited about that. Anyways, thank you very much for watching. If you're a Penguins fan, you know, as I said, that I never meant to downplay what they did this year. I remember 92 is just, there was something special there. Just something special. Lemieux out for a long period of time, both in the regular season and the playoffs. Contract squabble with Francis and their head coach from their first year passing away. It is incredible to overcome those things, and they did it. So that's why, for my money, they are one of the greatest teams of all time. And it's a shame that a lot of subscribers to this channel never got to see them play. All right, I will talk to you guys again soon. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and thank you so much for watching.